Hi, my name is Castor. Welcome to today's video. I'd like to give a quick disclaimer that this video was filmed over the course of a couple days, so you'll see sort of the lighting and some of the camera positioning changing. It was a little unavoidable because I was sick and then I had to deal with some work stuff, so hopefully it won't happen again, but sorry if stuff looks a little wonky in this video. This video is going to be specifically geared towards partners and loved ones of individuals with dissociative identity disorder. That being said, the information in this video will be helpful to anyone who is looking for a better understanding of dissociative identity disorder. This video is going to include some DID basics and statistics, diagnostic criteria, common symptoms, and common comorbid conditions. So before I get into the details of DID, there are three very important points that I want to make. Anything you need to know about DID, these are the three most important things to know. The first one is that dissociative identity disorder is a dissociative disorder. It is not a personality disorder. And that is why the name was updated in 1994 in the DSM, because we were able to understand that no, this is not a personality disorder. This is a trauma-related, dissociation-related disorder. The second point is that DID is meant to be a covert disorder. It is supposed to be the case that the AMP or host of the system is unaware that they have DID and unaware that they have alters. Likewise, it is meant for no one else to be aware of this as well, so no one outside, no other person to be aware that this individual has DID or that they have alters. This is because the whole point of dissociative identity disorder is to allow the child, and later as they grow up the adult, to separate themselves from the trauma that they experienced as a child to allow themselves to function as though that trauma had never occurred. And to acknowledge that they have dissociative identity disorder, that they have alters, is to also acknowledge that they have experienced severe childhood trauma. If your loved one was previously unaware that they had DID, that they had alters, even if they were unaware that they had childhood trauma, that is part of the disorder. If you were unaware that they had DID, that they had alters, if you were unaware that they had experienced any type of childhood trauma, that is part of the disorder, and that is very, very important to understand. A lot of people, when they come out to others, will be told, I haven't noticed any different types of personality or behavior in you. I didn't know you had any trauma. You can't have had any trauma. Therefore, you can't have DID. And this is incredibly false because the point of DID is to separate the child from the trauma. They aren't supposed to know. You aren't supposed to know. That being said, many individuals with DID do become aware of their symptoms, and they may even become aware of the fact that they are a system before they are formally diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. However, both experiences are equally valid, and that brings me into my third and I think most important point to make, and that is that every system is different. And that is because the traumas that they have experienced and gone through are different. Even systems that go through the same traumas will have DID that presents differently. But why am I saying that this is the most important point? Why does it matter, and what does it mean? It means that whatever preconceived idea you have about DID, whatever mold or template you have in your head about how the disorder should appear or how those with it should present or act, do not hold your loved one or partner to this standard. Although familiarizing yourself with the symptoms and appearance of DID in others can be vital, and is something I highly recommend you do to better understand your loved one with DID, do not expect your loved one to be exactly like or even mildly similar in behavior and appearance as other individuals that you've seen with DID. This especially applies to any media representations you've seen of DID, that is in movies, TV shows, as those are almost across the board grossly incorrect and rarely correctly portray dissociative identity disorder. But even any DID YouTubers that you've seen, including myself, or bloggers, or Instagram accounts, or any other social media accounts or groups that you're part of where you see individuals with dissociative identity disorder. This also includes systems that you may know in real life. Everyone's DID will be different. And just because you've seen a certain representation or presentation of DID that tends to be the common experience, say, among YouTubers or among bloggers, this is not every experience that individuals with DID have. They vary greatly between individuals, and that is very important to understand. Just because your loved one or partner may not display actions or behaviors that are similar to ones that you've seen online, or in person, or in the movies, that does not mean that they do not have the disorder. It doesn't mean that they aren't experiencing these things. You need to validate what they're experiencing and understand that what you know about DID is not the whole picture. Hi, this is Sean. Sorry about the angle. I'm just cutting in the editing process because there's a point I wanted to make that didn't make it into the video. Not only is everyone's experience is different, but something Caster talks about a little later in the video, and that is that often people with DID have other co-occurring comorbid conditions, and that will greatly affect the way that the person acts, as it would any person who has depression or any person who has anxiety, because one system may have a condition that another system does not have, and therefore those two systems will look very different, because DID is not the only thing affecting the way that this person behaves and acts. They're also being affected by these other comorbid conditions. And these things being said, here's another point. No human is the same as another human. Everyone you meet is going to act and behave differently. And this absolutely goes the exact same for DID systems as well. They're people just like any other people, and they're going to act differently than other people. If you've met one person with DID, you've met one person with DID. You've only seen a small part of the window of what that's like. And I think this is important to keep in mind. So sorry for cutting in. I just wanted to get that point in there. Bye. So let's get into some facts and statistics. DID is a dissociative disorder caused by severe, prolonged trauma during childhood. Often when people think of trauma in regards to this disorder, they instantly think of abuse. This could include physical, emotional, sexual, and spiritual abuse. Although these are what most people think of when they think of causes of trauma for this disorder, there can also be many other causes, such as war, natural disasters, and children who undergo many invasive medical procedures. This could be from an accident, from a condition they were born with, or from an illness. It's also important to remember that things that may not be traumatic to one child may be traumatic to another child. Adults who live through traumatic experiences don't all react to that experience in the same way, and the same goes for children. DID used to be called multiple personality disorder. A lot of people today are familiar with the term multiple personality disorder, but have never heard of DID before. That's because the name was updated in 1994 in the DSM to reflect a better understanding of the condition. We had now understood that it was not a personality disorder, like borderline personality disorder is, rather a dissociative disorder. Unfortunately, this change in the DSM wasn't really transferred into pop culture. The majority of people were still calling dissociative identity disorder multiple personality disorder, and to this day it still very much is called that, which is unfortunate because it was updated for a reason. We better understood the causes of the disorder, what the disorder was really like, what living with it was like, and how to better diagnose it in people. Additionally, along with the name multiple personality disorder carries a lot of stigmas with it. And unfortunately, because of movies and TV shows that center around the term dissociative identity disorder, that term also now carries a lot of stigma and misinformation. There have, however, been multiple studies that show a prevalence of anywhere from 7 to 15%. Now, you may be wondering why some research studies seem to have such higher numbers. And that's because there can be a more localized prevalence of DID in communities and areas that suffered through a large-scale trauma, such as a war or a natural disaster. It's difficult to get an exact measurement on the number of cases of DID, and that's because it's a very difficult disorder to get diagnosed. It takes, on average, 6 years to finally get a diagnosis. This is largely because, although DID is an accepted real disorder in the DSM, many psychiatrists and clinicians still don't believe in the disorder, or they believe that it's too rare for anyone that they work with to have the condition, which is entirely false. I know it's hard to get a sense just looking at a number, 1 to 3% that doesn't really sound like much. But the number of individuals with the gene for red hair is 2%. So if you think of the number of people that you know with red hair, that is the number of people that you know who are diagnosed with DID. The individual experiences 2 or more distinct identities or personality states, each with its own enduring pattern of perceiving, relating to, and thinking about the environment itself. The disruption in identity involves a change in sense of self, sense of agency, and changes in behavior, consciousness, memory, perception, cognition, and motor function. Frequent gaps are found in the individual's memories of personal history, including people, places, and events, for both the distant and recent past. These recurrent gaps are not consistent with ordinary forgetting. The symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, and other important areas of functioning. The disturbance is not a normal part of a broadly accepted cultural or religious practice. In children, the symptoms are not better explained by imaginary playmates or other fantasy play. The symptoms are not attributable to the psychological effects of a substance, like blackouts or catatonic behavior during alcohol intoxication or another medical condition. I'm now going to go down a list of some of the common symptoms of DID that are recognizable not as the distinct symptoms of the disorder itself, but behavior that often is found in people with this disorder. I am going to throw out a trigger warning for this period of the video, because I am going to be talking about common experiences and behaviors of those with DID, and this could include some self-detrimental behavior, as well as just generally triggering topics. Please absolutely feel free to skip ahead in the video to this time, where I will be done talking about this. So here's some of the common symptoms and experiences shared by people with DID. History of depression or suicidal behavior, childhood history of physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological abuse, reports one parent was very cold and critical, reports of a wonderful parents by a person who is clearly emotionally troubled, abusive relationships in adulthood, strong attacks of shame. They see themselves as bad or undeserving, sacrifices self for others, they do not feel like they deserve help or that they are a burden, reluctant to ask for help from others, is sure you do not want to be troubled with seeing him or her, reports being able to turn off pain or put it out of their mind, self-mutilation or self-injuring behavior, hears voices, flashbacks, visual, auditory, somatic, affective, or behavioral, history of unsuccessful therapy, multiple past diagnoses such as depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, borderline, substance abuse, reports of odd changes or variation in physical skills or interests, described by significant others as having two personalities, family history of dissociation, phobia or panic attacks, substance abuse, history of psychophysiological symptoms, seizure-like episodes, history of nightmare and sleep disorders, history of sleepwalking, school problems, report psychotic experiences, anorexia or bulimia or other eating disorders, sexual difficulties, history of shifting symptom picture, one day symptom of this, next day symptom of that, etc. Now, I wanted to share these symptoms with you because I want you to realize that these symptoms are symptoms that your partner or loved one may experience. You may already see them experiencing them. You may not have seen them experiencing some of these. This is perfectly normal and to be expected along with DID and the comorbid conditions that often come along with it, such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, etc. That is to say, though, that if you do not see any of these behaviors displayed in your loved one with DID, that does not mean that they do not have DID or that they don't experience these. Like I said before, DID is a covert disorder. These are often symptoms that are overlooked, and although these are often behaviors and symptoms that are shared by many with DID, it's important to recognize that these are related to DID as well as related to other comorbid conditions that can occur alongside DID, such as depression, anxiety, bipolar, borderline, etc. Now, I would also like to specify that if you do not have a DID diagnosis and you don't have DID, and you don't think you have DID, these symptoms are not to imply that you have DID. Many other conditions have these symptoms, and additionally many people experience these things who do not have any mental disorders or illnesses. Well, that does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe. I don't have much up on the channel right now. I've got a couple great videos coming out soon that you won't want to miss. Feel free to also comment if there are any videos that you would like to see in the future. I have a couple plans for some, but if there's anything that you in particular want to see about DID or mental illness, feel free to comment down below. I'll also leave some links to our Instagram and website that you can reach us at. Our website is a blog. There's not a whole lot on our blog right now because we've been working on a couple different projects, but you will be able to find on our website a FAQ page. It isn't entirely finished, but I do go more into depth on some of the topics that I touched upon here today, and that can be a great place to follow up on some of that information if you're looking for more info. I'd also like to remind people if they're ever having a hard time, you can always feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. It's a newer account, so there's not a lot on it, but we're always on, and we'll always check our DMs if anyone needs anything or has any questions. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good day.